Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Reset to Thrive channel, where we hope to give you some hope on recovering from long COVID or MECFS. And today I've got the wonderful Trent with us, who is going to share some nuggets from his journey. So, welcome, Trent. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Nikki. Great to be here.
We're so happy to have you. So, I just guess we just start with telling us a little bit about yourself and how this all started for you.
Yeah. So like many people with long COVID, I think I got COVID essentially right at the beginning of the UK lockdown in March of 2020. So at the time, obviously there were no tests. I was fairly confident it's what I had. I knew other people had had it. And it wasn't, I didn't actually get that sick, but it was more the kind of thing where I just didn't fully recover. Um, and I rarely think about all the symptoms I had at the time, but there were a lot. When I write them out, there's about 10 symptoms, like ranging from gastrointestinal stuff to just really weird things like this kind of like vibrating sensation when I would like speak. I had these horrible heart palpitations, really bad nausea. I had something I would call COVID hot. That's what I call it because I just get so overheated. And it was like an absolute nightmare. And I had like, yeah, tinnitus, different types of pain, breathlessness. I remember climbing the stairs and just getting really out of breath and being really weirded out by that. And of course, like fatigue. So I just didn't fully recover, but I didn't, at the time, long COVID wasn't a thing. I didn't know what was going on. And I was still exercising. Like I was actually in really good shape at the time. I was playing tennis, I was swimming, I was working full time. Um, I was quite busy and like I was dealing with symptoms, but they weren't to the point where like I was so concerned. It was more just like, why am I still not recovered? This is getting weird. And I think a few months later in August is when I started doing a lot of medical tests. Like a lot of people, everything just kept coming back fine. That's also when I started trying supplements. That was definitely a big one. Like every Facebook group, anywhere you look, people recommend about 600 different supplements. And I think I've tried at least 30. I only finally threw out this huge container of supplements, like all the supplements I wasted so much money on. Um, and by the next year, so by January 2021, I got COVID again, and I started to feel a lot worse after. And I just kept getting COVID. Like I would get it 3 or 4 times a year. And it was really, really weird because, on the one hand, I was more cautious than anyone I knew. I didn't go crowded places. I had to go into London sometimes for work, but everywhere when I wore a mask, I was like so paranoid about getting COVID. If I saw people like without a mask in my house, I'd make sure people got tests. Even if I went to people's houses, I often wore a mask. It was really, yeah, wild that I was like doing all this stuff and I just couldn't stop getting COVID. And every time I wouldn't even get sick, it was like I would just feel weird. Like I'd have something would feel a bit off, and then all of a sudden my low COVID would get horrible, and I'd be like, "Oh, I must have COVID again." And it was very few times that I actually realized I was having COVID and would take a test and get like a positive result. So the one of the things I think early on that was really powerful for me was like I got really into meditation. And I went on my first like silent meditation retreat, which was really, really intense. It's like you wake up at 4:30 in the morning and you meditate all day till like 9:30 p.m. and you don't talk. And yeah, it was a brilliant experience. It was the first time I think in 2 years I didn't have any symptoms. It was also like a really big turning point mentally because I sort of had this realization of like how long COVID in some ways was a gift, which was an interesting thing that I realized then. And seeing how like it had forced me to slow down and how busy I'd been and how, yeah, I hadn't been taking care of myself. Um, but soon after that, the worst thing that happened in my long COVID journey was seeing the long COVID team through the National Health Service here in the UK. They gave me some advice that just totally destroyed my health. So I one day was playing like a singles tennis match. Like I said, I was in really good shape. I was exercising a lot, but like I was still having symptoms and it wasn't pleasant. But they told me, no, you have to stop exercising completely. You have to start pacing. Don't do anything that causes symptoms. If you like, basically, it's your fault if you have symptoms. You need to reduce until you don't have any symptoms. So of course this puts this like huge panic in me. Okay, so I went to reduced hours in my work, which was hard to do. I work in the charity sector. And I maintained this for over a full year. Like it was one of the most depressing years because during that year, my health just went down, 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 down. And I had a really old, elderly dog who, I could walk him around the block, but that was like, even that would give me like a panic of like, oh my God, is this too much? Work became so difficult. Like everything became difficult. I could barely socialize. Like I remember my partner like literally helping like push me up a hill because I was having so much trouble walking. So it was literally, I can't emphasize how much how that was the worst part in the whole thing, which is just so ironic. The first, then yeah, I guess around that time, yeah, I started trying. I just kept trying different things. I'll say, yeah, I tried a million different things. It was so frustrating. Some things helped slightly, but nothing really was like the big cure or anything. I saw the MECFS clinic in early 23. They gave me similar advice. It was like actually absolutely ridiculous. And at that point, I was so fed up. I was just like, I can't believe they're even telling me this. Like, I talked about swimming and how much I miss swimming. And they were like, well, what you do is like you build up to going swimming. So, like, the first time you just put on your swim stuff, you don't go anywhere. And like this whole thing where you would like build up and eventually you'd go to the pool, not go swimming, and come home. And I was like, this is ridiculous because I get COVID 3 or 4 times a year. I get so much worse. If I do this, I will literally never go swimming. And they're like, that's okay. People get out of shape all the time. And like, it was just ridiculous. Like the whole approach they had was so depressing. But it was just such a long journey that basically at some point, one of the first things that happened that really I think helped was I started low dose naltrexone in July of 23. So that was just over 3 years in, and that made a huge difference. I think at first I thought I was totally cured and I just went like wild. And then I realized I wasn't, and that was a bit depressing, but it definitely helped. Like it just made life a little bit easier. But my health was still like in this rapid decline. So I still couldn't get back into like exercise or like normal things that like I'd done before.
Yeah.
But by March of 2024, I'd been in this really intense job for a year in a nonprofit. I was in like the senior leadership team. And I was just beyond any normal kind of burnout from this situation in my health. And like I'd had basically developed a few other things that were going on. Like my health just kept deteriorating. I developed eczema at one point. I've never had any kind of skin issues before. I had a chronic infection, so I ended up being on antibiotics for 9 months, which if anyone's experienced that is like absolutely horrible for you in every way. It was a really awful thing to have to go through. And I had this chronic pain that just suddenly like came on and was so horrific and meant I couldn't sit, which was an absolute nightmare because when you have chronic fatigue, standing is exhausting, but then if you can't sit at all, what are you supposed to do? So I ended up like lying around a lot more, which was not ideal. So at that point, I just had to leave my job. Like I was able to take voluntary redundancy, and I spent a few months just like barely moving and just trying to recover. At this point, my partner was also pregnant, which was like exciting, but mostly at this point, I was just absolutely terrified because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And I just pursued every single medical treatment I could. I spent like the most ridiculous amount of money to see this person who is supposed to be some kind of world expert who basically just took a ton of my money and didn't do anything useful for me, which was just infuriating. Like I couldn't believe how much she charged. I just felt like it was almost a scam. And yes, so then, this is going on, doing terribly. I think at a certain point, I'd done every test in the world. I tried everything I could possibly find online. And I was really at the point where I was like, nothing's ever going to work. And yes, and I guess that's when Reset to Thrive came in. So then basically, I think it was like somehow like, there are just so many of these kind of Facebook groups around chronic fatigue, long COVID. They're absolutely depressing. I don't recommend them at all. It's like with anything like this, it's the people who are doing the worst who are going to be posting and sharing. And in some ways, it's helpful to have community, but it's just so negative. It just really brings you down and makes you feel hopeless. So somehow, I don't even know how I saw this because I wasn't like checking these groups as much. At some point because I'm a researcher, I was really going in and like making spreadsheets of all the potential treatments people are suggesting. But someone just said like that Jan's book had been really helpful to them. And I was like, well, I can buy a book. I read a lot. That's easy. So I bought her book, and I think it just transformed yeah, everything for me. Like by the time I'd finished the book, I just went from feeling completely hopeless to feeling hopeful. And then from there, it's just been like, that was in May of 2024. So that was like a year and 5 months ago. And
Wow.
it's just been like, not this journey, but like this kind of journey
Yeah.
upward ever
Yeah.
since.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's what a roller coaster. And then you have a baby at the end of all of that.
Yes, exactly.
Wow, brilliant. So you read the book and then obviously decided to do the program as well. What I guess were the things from Jan's book and from the program or even external to that that kind of made the biggest difference that made you go from, deteriorating to going up, aside from obviously the low dose naltrexone? What were the things you learnt from
Yeah,
Jan?
I think the number one thing was definitely just like my attitude change. Like, and I didn't realize how restrictive my life was. Like, I think in some ways I do, but I didn't realize on the like granular level of like every second and how much I was holding back. And because I think I'm a really like goofy, silly person, I didn't realize, like, I don't even know how to explain, but like the ways I would restrict my body and like just things I would have done before that would have been silly that I wouldn't do to like preserve energy. So one of the things I started doing was like, I love musicals. So I was listening to lots of musicals and like other music and just walking around the house singing, which I never have done before. So just the like bringing positivity and joy into my life, and having that be like an intentional practice in my life, was so helpful. And just I noticed a huge shift immediately that I didn't actually attribute. It was actually what happened was I didn't attribute it to the program because I thought that was impossible. And it was when I was seeing that super fancy doctor who put me on this medicine that since I've looked up and there's no evidence that it helps. And I don't know why she put me on it. But anyway, and I was paying a fortune for this medicine. So I thought it was the medicine. And so when I finished the course, she wouldn't give me more. It was all ridiculous. And I ended up going to my GP and like really panicking about getting more of this medicine. And I found a way to get some privately. And somehow, I don't remember how it actually happened, but somehow it became clear the medicine hadn't been what was helping me. And then it was just like, oh my God. And I think from then I knew, okay, this is going to work and this can work. So I think it was almost a good thing for it to happen that way, because even if I hadn't been sure, because I think it's easy to go into it with this really lack of confidence, but because I was also trying something medical that supposedly then is more likely to work, I had higher confidence something was going to help.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was so helpful. And I think from there, and what was really hard is I was dealing with the chronic pain at the same time. And I think I was still on antibiotics at that point, which was just a nightmare. So it was like trying to deal with so many things at the same time and feeling this like ticking time bomb that like a baby's coming very
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah.
So just trying everything. And I really treated it like this is what I'm working on right now. Like, I'm not going to worry about the fact that like our savings are rapidly depleting. And I'm not going to worry about like the fact that my partner's now doing more than I'm doing in terms of the house and stuff, even though she's working and pregnant, because I just had to, like, for our sake and our future, I knew I had to prioritize my health. So I think that mental state and having the space to do that, I recognize that was like a super privileged position to be in. A lot of people don't have that. But that really gave me I think the power to just focus on like, okay, what does this look like? What are the things I'm going to do? I did a lot of cold water swimming. I go at least once a week. And that's really helpful. I find that like a great reset. And actually now I've gotten into just doing cold showers. So I don't enjoy showering anymore because it's always cold, but I find it really helpful. And there was a time when like I would sometimes take 3 showers a day because I'd just be like, oh, I'm feeling off, and I'd take a shower and I feel fine.
Yeah.
So it was definitely about like exploring different things and then figuring out what actually works. So I did pain reprocessing therapy with this guy who was fantastic. And he gave me lots of different tools that were really easy, would take like 5 minutes. And he gave me some somatic exercises that I still do pretty much every day. Yeah, I did them every day for like a very, very long time. And only recently have I been a bit more flexible around that. And those just really help. So I think for me, it was about trying a million things, finding what actually helped, and keeping that going and staying positive, and like prioritizing socializing, because I'd notice, like, yeah, because I would notice so many of these silly things where like I'd be absolutely exhausted, but then if I had a nice time with a friend, at a certain point it became clear that like I could forget about my symptoms and I could actually just have fun with my friend, and then by the time we were done I actually felt fine. So
Yeah.
like things like that, when you're like, it's not actually that I'm tired, and realizing my triggers. So like one of the big ones was because I spent so much time lying down because I was having this chronic pain. um, the sofa became a big trigger. So
Yeah.
if I lay down on the sofa, I would like get tired so quickly. So I kept like forcing myself to get up and like do other things.
Yeah.
um, and trying to work on the sitting while, yeah, trying to work on my fatigue while it was just a million things at the same time. But it was challenging, but it was like so rewarding. And I think just like having faith and knowing that there were times when like it would sort of plateau, but like figuring out what it was that was plateauing me, I guess. And then I think when the baby came, that was really wild. I mean, trying to recover when you have a tiny infant is not easy, especially because like, especially I was still struggling with sitting at the time, and just like, all the fun symptoms and things. But in some ways it really helped me be really present and mindful, just like being with him,
Yeah.
and like kind of channeling that, not having time to actually meditate, but channeling that into like my relationship with him, and being present, was really powerful, and I think in some ways really helpful. It definitely shocked me that I can continue to do okay even though I had such interrupted sleep and like all this stuff, and definitely showed me that it wasn't actually about being tired, because there were, months when I wasn't getting tons of sleep. I was definitely getting more than most people with a newborn, since I wasn't working, and our baby was actually not the worst sleeper in the world.
Thank goodness.
Um, yeah. So yeah, I think that covers the most
That's
of the stuff about the program. I mean, yeah, I think I definitely, for me, it was definitely about adapting it and figuring out what are the things that work for me, rather than just like taking it at face value and doing
yeah.
everything. Yeah, which I think is what it's about. It's not about like a strict set of things to do.
Absolutely, pulling all the things that work for you. And I love the fun element. I think it can so easily get very serious and very bleak when we get so unwell, and bringing back the fun and the joy and even the connection with your son. I think that's so important. Beautiful. So, if someone's listening to this and they're considering maybe doing Reset to Thrive, or they're just kind of considering all the millions of options out there, the supplements, the doctors, the programs, what advice would you give them?
I think, yeah, my main advice is probably just about like finding a way to feel hopeful, whatever that looks like for you. And I think, you know, if you're worried about finances and things, definitely like starting with the book could be a great way to start, because it gives you the intro. And I think just having the book could in itself be enough, although it is really hard to do without some kind of group support. I mean, maybe if you did it with like other people together as your own group thing. But I think, yeah, I would say be cautious about the fact there are so many programs out there. And I, as a researcher who my focus is on like the impact of different interventions, I get really frustrated that I've seen a lot of programs that cost like thousands of dollars and are by someone who like recovered last year and have no qualifications whatsoever. And I find that really concerning. And it may be helpful, but it's usually like thousands of dollars or pounds, and you have access to it for like a few months, and anyway. So I think there are a lot of different things out there, and I don't think you need to break the bank on this one. I mean, that's one of the things that drew me to Reset to Thrive, is it was like so much more affordable,
Yeah.
and I honestly couldn't believe the price, and that you actually have lifetime access,
Yeah.
and that like I continue to attend the monthly groups, and that there's free webinars all the time, and then there's webinars you can pay for if you want, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
So I think that was like, for me, it was about, this is more affordable and accessible, and actually you get that support. So I think, yeah, just like finding a way to be hopeful, and finding things to be hopeful and positive about in your daily life, and noticing, as Jan says, those green shoots of recovery. So the things that are going well. One of the things I really wish I'd done is I wish I kept a journal from the very beginning of my recovery journey, because I think that would be so powerful for me to read and see how happy I was about going on like a 10-minute walk, which now if I went on a 10-minute walk and like felt tired at the end of it, I'd be like, oh my God, like what's wrong? What's going on with me? You know, and if I feel, yeah, any, you know, because I haven't really had fatigue in so long at this point. I think it's been at least a few months, yeah, a few months since I've really had any symptoms. I do have a baby in nursery, so I've not been in the best health. I can't lie. But now I do actually get colds, whereas before I didn't get real colds.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think you just have to have hope. And I think one of the things for me is I know a lot of people with chronic fatigue. Like it's amazing how many people I know. And I think it's because most of my friends are people who work in the nonprofit or public sector in really stressful jobs, really empathetic people, who've totally given up on recovery and like have these lives that are really limited, you know, 12 years, 15 years. And I see for them how hard it is to be hopeful. But I think it's that like there is actual science behind this program and there is evidence that people can recover. And if you understand how research works, you will understand why there isn't these like really robust studies on programs like this, because you know the pharmaceutical industry doesn't have any money to make off that, and there isn't anyone wanting to fund things like this because it's much harder to do it in a controlled way. Well, you can't really. So I think it's understanding that there's other ways that evidence is formed, and you know, intuitively for me, knowing what the long COVID clinic did to me and how they destroyed my health, this was the opposite. It was everything that was the exact opposite of what they told me to do. It wasn't about telling me to go run a marathon. It was about telling me to healthfully, positively build up, rather than them telling me to tear everything down and then maybe I'll be able to build up from there. But
Yeah.
just a very different approach.
So different, so different. Such an inspiring story, Trent. Thank you so much. I'm sure people are going to get so much out of
My
that.
pleasure.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.